Hello everyone. Today's video is about writing, but specifically it's about the preparation time or the brainstorming time we give students before they actually start writing. In this video, we'll be looking at different areas, answering a couple of questions, including the following. The first one, when to give students time to prepare and why, in which tasks or before which tasks, when in the lesson, and so on. Second one, can we skip the preparation time or the brainstorming? Third one, how can you as a teacher help students to brainstorm ideas? How can you get the best out of them? And finally, what is your role as a teacher while students are brainstorming or planning ideas together or individually? Now, when we're talking about writing in this video, we'll be talking about writing in general, whether it's your main aim in the lesson, like you're doing everything to achieve the writing task at the end, or whether it's a freer practice activity in a language lesson, whether it's a vocabulary or grammar, and students need to write something by the end of the lesson to practice the language. Now, when to give students time to brainstorm ideas, like before which tasks? Ideally, the answer to this question will be if you're asking students to do any writing, there should be some sort of planning or brainstorming. So, for example, if you're asking them to write a paragraph, a story, an essay, describing a holiday which they spent, or for example, describing their daily routines. Whatever the task is, students need time to prepare, they need time to plan, they need time to brainstorm ideas to be ready for the writing. Now, why do we give students time to plan or brainstorm ideas? Now, try to pause the video and think of the reasons. Why would you do that if you're a teacher in a class based on your experience, or if you don't have any experience based on what you think is correct? Now, the first reason is that it helps students organize their thoughts and focus on the ideas they need in the writing task. The second one, it helps students focus on the organization of the writing itself, like where to put different kinds of information, which one comes first, which one comes second, how to organize it, and so on. It also avoids students being stuck when writing and having them think and correct themselves while writing, which causes more problems. So I just want you to imagine that you are writing an essay without any planning, without any preparation. And then in the middle of the writing, you remember an idea. And then you will have to go back to the writing and you will have to cross out what you wrote and then put your idea. And then you will need to think about detail or examples. And then you will waste a lot of time going back and forth between these processes. So making sure to give students time to plan is the best option for students to produce an organized and coherent piece of writing. And finally, this is normally how the brain works. Like your brain does not start immediately with the thing. It just needs time to process, it needs time to think before you actually do something, which applies to writing, speaking, or any other thing. Now, can we skip it? What do you think? Now, my answer to this question would be normally no. We cannot skip the preparation time because it's essential for students to organize their ideas and again to produce a coherent and a well-structured writing, essay, paragraph, whatever. If you do not give them time to plan, they are more likely to be lost and they are just writing whatever comes in their mind, which will not be as organized as it should be. So my advice is give them time to plan, time to brainstorm, whatever the time is, whatever the task is, like depending on the task, they might need 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes. So it depends on what they are planning for. Now, how can you as a teacher help students to brainstorm ideas? Like what can you do? The first thing that we need to look at is basically setting the task clearly for the students, telling them who they are writing the essay or paragraph to, who's reading it, the audience, what the topic is exactly, and give them very clear instructions. The second one will be to provide them with a clear planner to help students organize their ideas. And again, the planner differs according to the task. And the third one is to allow students time to share their ideas with each other so all students can benefit from the ideas. Now, you can do this, you can do the sharing part on the board, or you can recreate the groups in the classroom. All of this is fine, but let's focus now on the second step, the planner, and which planner is suitable to which task. Now, the first thing you need to think about is basically the kind of tasks students are doing and what kind of planner would help them organize their ideas. In the coming part, we'll be looking at different tasks with different planners, and these planners can apply to any task of the same sort. So, for example, if we're looking at this one here, describe the place where you live, write about the positives and negatives. This is a very common task for students to write about, and the planner applies to the same idea of advantages and disadvantages. And with this one, we can use the T chart in which students brainstorm ideas, positives and negatives, and they do that in bullet points. So they do not waste time writing full sentences. Just make sure you instruct the students not to write full sentences. They need just to write bullet points so they can use it in the writing. Another task, for example, which is uh, describing a festival, describing an occasion, a holiday, something they did. And again, we can use something that we call a spider diagram, in which they brainstorm ideas about the place, the food and drinks, the name of the festival itself, the clothes, activities, and when it happened. Another task, for example, is describe your education, like how they learned, what happened, etc. And for this one, we can use something like this, which is what we call a WH chart. And again, this helps the student think about what the education was, where it happened, how it happened, who told them, when and why were they in that process. Another task is like this one, for example, how is your language different from 50 years ago? And in this task, the students would need to think about differences regarding different ideas or different topics and think about examples. Something like this, how the language is different regarding speaking about food or writing about food or communicating with other people. And we have some examples of language that actually were not in the Arabic language, for example, but they were added because people are using it a lot, like sushi, falafel, and so on. And of course, in communication, texting language, which is becoming very popular nowadays. And this is what we call the ideas map. Like they are brainstorming different ideas related to different topics and adding more examples. Another task is like this, for example, write a narrative paragraph about the business history of Google. And this one is not any narrative. This one is related to facts about history, about Google itself. So again, students need to do some search and organize their ideas in something like this. They write a fact, add more detail, another fact, add more detail, and so on. And again, this will help students see how their essay or how their paragraph is going, which fact comes first and which fact comes second, and so on. But if the students started writing immediately without organizing their ideas, it will be very difficult for them to logically organize the ideas while they are writing. Now, what is your role as a teacher while students are brainstorming ideas? It's the same role whenever students are doing a task is to monitor carefully and help students if they are struggling to find ideas. You can provide some clues. You can direct the students to find the ideas in a certain place or find it in a certain website if they are struggling. It's also helpful to give students some sort of a reading text or a model for them to use, but this happens early on in the lesson if you're doing a writing lesson. Another way that you can help students is basically after they finish the brainstorming is to add their ideas on the board or the PowerPoint so that everybody can see them and people with less ideas or people who are struggling with finding ideas, they can actually use the ideas their friends came up with in the brainstorming stage, which is helping everybody in the classroom. And then these are the ideas that students are using later on if they are writing about the same topic. But your role as a teacher is very important when monitoring and making sure that students who are struggling are actually working, even if you are regrouping the students, putting weaker students with stronger ones so they can help each other, but you need to be monitoring carefully and efficiently all the time, not just walking around the classroom and everybody's writing and that's it. You need to be there for the students. You need to make sure that you're actually seeing what they are writing, whether the ideas are relevant, irrelevant, and then you can provide input. Like, for example, when you're monitoring, and then you would say, oh, take a look at this one. Do you think it's relevant? Or do you think it's helping with the writing? Do you think this example is accurate? And so on. So you can give them some clues while they are brainstorming so they are actually ready for the writing stage. Now, thank you so much for listening. If you have reached this far, scan the QR code and stay in touch. It includes all social media platforms. You can reach me easily. And I look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you very much. Goodbye.